all consumer touchpoints from a virtual assistant perspective. When I talk about reimagining product or product content, you were
Hello and welcome everyone to the next episode of the A Media House podcast Simulated Reality. Today we have with us the Chief Solutions Officer at Merkle, Navin Dhananjaya. Welcome Navin, how are you today?
Good, Kashyap, and thanks for having me on the interview. Really excited to kind of be speaking to you on this subject.
Fantastic. I've been speaking with Gen AI with a lot of leaders. Everybody within the space has been speaking about Gen AI, and fairly so, because the buzz created is not uncalled for. The hype around it is exciting for a lot of leaders. But one of the things is that we are going to talk about a specific sector, which will help our audience to kind of deep dive into some of the use cases that are being worked around. But before we enter into the retail sector, right? Can you help us understand a little bit around how Merkle is approaching Gen AI, right? Because until very recently, Gen AI was not a thing. Probably we talked about large language models, we talked about chatbots, but this was not. So how is the conversation in Merkle been, and why specifically did you probably want to talk about Gen AI in retail, so that we can set the context and then we can move on to the next questions?
No, at Merkle, we've always been at the cutting edge of technology, whether it is analytics or whether it is technology platforms or whether it is anything to do with leveraging them for greater customer impact. So, and from a Gen AI perspective, it naturally leans itself into what we've done on analytics, advanced analytics, AI, and now Gen AI. So we've been constantly evolving, and that's like next step for us. And it augurs well for our business because a lot of our business is to do with consumer insights. A lot of our stakeholders are from a marketing or product merchandising background. So a lot of these use cases augur well for them. So that's one reason why we've kind of leaned into it much earlier than probably some of our other counterparts.
Fantastic. Retail in itself is a big sector, and there are a lot of aspects to retail, right, in the industry. In the early stages, what are some of the immediate use cases that you're observing, right? So what are some of the immediate wins that the industry can focus on when it comes to implementing Gen AI in retail? Yeah.
So retail, I mean, like you said, retail is a much it's a significantly large sector in which Gen AI can probably make significant impact. But that from where I come from, I think there are a few things with respect to, say, just if you start with retail and the retail products or the retail SKU. So right from how a retail SKU is, like if you look at the digital world, how a retail SKU is described for all of us to transact with, how the product image is there, what kind of content it is associated with, the entire video, the description, the classification. In terms of any product, there are at least 100 to 150 attributes that go along with the product that help discoverability of the product and better conversion. With Gen AI, I think a lot of that can be maximized. One, it can be generated at scale too. So if you have 1 million products online, or if you have thousands of products online, you will basically be able to the same kind of treatment to all those products at a much faster rate, and also change the treatment or change the relevant content for all those products at a much faster manner. So I think that's the most simplistic and immediate use case that would come to mind, and very apt to retail.
Fantastic. Probably the use case that you just explained, right? Some of the things I'm sure were already kind of in progress, or you were leveraging data for some of these things already, right? What is the difference between implementing AI for these use cases and Gen AI? And I want to understand this from the perspective of not just the implementation, but what is some of the thought process behind it, right? When it comes to implementing Gen AI, when do you decide that this solution should be Gen AI, not AI, and what does that difference exactly mean, or what does that translate to?
Example that I just said, it is not about Gen AI is coming in and solving or creating a new paradigm of sorts. So it's basically reimagining stuff on terms of how you would represent the product online, or how you would reimagine all consumer touchpoints from a virtual assistant perspective. So from when I talk about reimagining product or product content, I mean you were always using AI to kind of generate, say, product content. Now the generative AI will just add to that and give a more personalized feel to it, or improve that experience per se. So basically, from a generative AI perspective, it can aggregate a lot of outside in data, whether it is market data. It can help you test concept or test that entire content that we were going to do. Unlike just AI, when you get a content that you can take it in, or you'll have much more ideas to kind of choose from. And that augmented with virtual assistants that can help the category manager or help the the end consumer of the product interact and have conversational choices which you can experiment. I think those are the differences that are coming together. So I think it's the ability to visualize, make it more personable, have those conversations. I think that's basically taking whatever applications we had with AI to that next level, and that creates a significant competitive advantage in an area. And in the current era where customers expect to have a almost like a singular interface to help them make that final decision. So basically, the generative AI can help accelerate that process.
Correct, correct. Can you help us with an example? Like, can you help us take a use case probably and walk us through it? What, some of the thought process, where was AI used, where was data science used, and where was Gen AI used? So that we can, help elaborate on what exactly this means, implementing Gen AI for the use case.
So sticking to the same example of products, so retail products, so any retailer would who wants to be in the digital world would want their products to be appropriately discoverable by customers so that the conversion happens faster. So let's take that as a simplistic use case. So where data sciences or analytics help is first of all to help better classification of the products or product categories. So I mean there are so many classifications available online, so you'll need to have the product in the right category. So, for example, running shoes. So, running shoes can be in sportswear. Running shoes can be in fashion. Running shoes can be in regular athletic wear, and so on and so forth. So, which is the right classification where running shoes should be featured in, so that it is more discoverable? And what should it be? So, should it be, and at what price point should it be? And how many variants of the product should it be? What kind of elasticity does the price point offer? All of this is analytics. Now, in terms of getting from here to AI, AI can help with respect to, like, when you're doing competitive analysis, you would want to kind of basically compare the shoes with say a bunch of other shoes in the market which are there very similar, which may not be described similarly. So to kind of get to those kind of shoes, you will probably need to say do image matching, or you need to do text matching and things like. And that's where AI help us a lot. Now, from a generative AI perspective, you can not only kind of say that, okay, suggest you, first of all, you can have conversations basically based on what you want the product catalog to be. So it is more suggestive, more interactive to say that, okay, suggest the best form of the visual for a shoe compared to what I have already have. That's one. Otherwise, you can actually interact with your models to have, based on all the learnings that it has, based on all the, like, when we talk about LLMs and when you talk about large knowledge models, it can aggregate all the knowledge what you have internally as well as what is there in the marketplace to kind of suggest what the right description. And that's where generative AI is going to take. Now, all of these three processes are evolving. I mean, there are many retailers who are not even probably at step one. But the other significant advantage of generative AI is that probably you could directly jump onto this step three and leverage a lot of learnings that are there outside in the market, and plus get a jump start to this kind of a process.
Correct. With regards to implementing Gen AI in retail, right? One of the things that we have always talked about, and not just Gen AI, especially AI and data science, because data scientists, we don't consider, or many companies don't position themselves as a data science company. They position themselves as a data-driven consultancy services company. And with that in mind, one of the things that leaders have always stressed on the relevance of domain knowledge when it comes to retail, right? I want to kind of understand, how are you structuring these teams when you are trying to build Gen AI teams for retail specifically? Is the thought process a little different than before? How much, obviously the knowledge remains important, but I just want to understand the thought process behind structuring these teams. What are some of the domain knowledges that is required? What sort of talent are you looking for, etc.?
We've always structured teams in three specific boxes. So one is the expertise that we have in the technology, and here the technology could be analytics or advanced analytics or AI, and people who are more adept with models or model building, or we take the most relevant models that are available in the world, and then do a lot of transfer learning with our data so that the models are more relevant for us. So those are some of the things. Then there is this team also that does what is called as platforms. When I say platforms, they kind of take all of these learnings or all of these expertise, put it together on a platform which has basically a no code, low code interface. So it's basically a technology platform. And then comes the teams, the operations teams that kind of access this. So basically, we make AI accessible, or we intend to make generative AI also accessible to the larger masses. So everybody need not know everything that is there in terms of technology or data science and things like that. So by doing this, what happens is that that learning is spread to a larger set of people just by having an interface. So likewise with generative AI, if we have, like we have a lot of, say, product catalog intelligence available. Previously, we would use that to kind of say do say image match. In the generative AI construct, we might use that to build some large language models or large knowledge models that would, with which we can interact. People can interact in a conversational manner to kind of take a little more of those decisions as well. So that's what making, so that we always work on the construct of making AI or Gen AI more accessible. So that's been our mantra throughout. So those are
Fantastic.
the three buckets in which teams are organized. So basically, what it also means, Kashyap, is that when we talk about large knowledge models, that knowledge model itself could be retail driven, or the large knowledge model itself could be like, consumer insights driven, or we have different areas where we have large amounts of data based on which we will probably generate those knowledge models.
Correct. And what are some of the challenges that you are currently seeing, right? Have you put any Gen AI model into production? Because I think this landscape is moving so fast. I was speaking with a few leaders a month back, and around probably 10-15% said, we have one or two models that are in production. 85. Around 2 months back, this conversation was none of it is in production. Everything is a POC. Have you put any in production? What are some of the challenges that you're facing as a company to put this, and how are you trying to overcome it?
No, significant chunk of our business is run on this edge of AI already. So we do use that construct to kind of deliver to the business. It's been in production. I cannot tell the numbers, but like a large chunk of, like at least 20-25% of our business is AI driven in that sense. Now, on top of that, we have already started deploying for at least many use cases within that construct. We are exploring, because Gen AI also, the one thing with Gen AI is there is an opportunity to step back and discover as well where else could you have used Gen AI. So much so that even our development for the AI models, our entire development environment is something that we are using Gen AI for. So somebody who writes code once, twice, I mean the third or fourth times, the IDE itself illustrates what the code should be written and like build on. Right from that level onwards to kind of building large knowledge models, we've kind of identified like at least 5 or 6 different areas where we have built large language models. Now, they are in semi-production is what I would say. And why I say that is because from a client context or from a deployment context, the challenge about, there are two kinds of challenges that we want to overcome before we kind of take it fully into production. First thing is how much of dilution is there from an external world perspective, so that it is more contextualized to the implementation that we have. Secondly, we also want to ensure that when we deliver services to a client, these the sheer fact that these knowledge models or can learn a lot more from environments, is that we need to ensure that the capability of these models to sift through cross customer data is there. So we need to draw walls between them, so that they don't learn from, like, customer A doesn't learn from customer B of sorts. We need to keep that isolated. So the weakness is in the strength as well. So the strength is that capability to sift through large vast bodies of text and synthesize knowledge, but we need to ensure that these interactions are limited to the clients that we're working with. So that's a boon and a bane in the Gen AI world. So those are some of the challenges that we need to overcome before we kind of look at these large language models. And
Yeah, and to follow-up question to that, right? With regards to that, what are some of the organizational changes that enterprises need to do with that, to keeping this point that you just made in mind?
I think enterprises need to kind of ensure that their contracts are a little more tightened up when they kind of look for service providers in terms of where the data exists or where the knowledge exists or where the language interactions and the technology extensions sit. So at the same time, they should not make it a barrier for real interaction. So because finally, it's about the conversational nature and the extension of decision making that matters the most. So they should ensure that they are line of business managers leverage this and they are able to kind of augment their current work along with what Gen AI is able to do.
Okay. Okay. And with with that in mind, what are some of the closing thoughts that you would like to mention? What does the near future for Gen AI in retail look like? And what does Merkle want to, what are some of the objectives of Merkle in the near future as well as in the long term that they hope to achieve and enable enterprises to, leverage Gen AI to its maximum potential?
So we are just, we are just beginning, right? I mean, it's about this path is a lot more unexplored, I would say, and I think it is almost like a complete step function jump or a paradigm shift of sorts, where we can now integrate Gen AI with a lot of what we have with AI tools available with the customers. So basically, there are a lot of tools like we work a lot with Salesforce as an example. Now, our integration with Salesforce, Einstein GPT, and it's something that can result in significant business outcomes. So that's one way to look at it. And then we also have our identity solution called Mercury that like we cover almost like more than 95% of the US demographics with Mercury. So in from that perspective, we can get to building more better contextual large knowledge models that can enable a much more granular understanding of the customer behavior, enabling human-like connections at scale. Yeah, so those are some of the charters that we have. Likewise, with respect to consumer insights, just the entire thing about how you do primary research and how you do the hypothesis testing of a product in the primary research and how you develop that questionnaire itself can be conversationally got out of a knowledge model one, or can be had via conversations itself rather than research. So these are some of the, at least all these three examples that I took are areas where we are furthering our Gen CX development. Now, that said, I mean, any area that you explore, probably there is an application for AI or Gen AI. I think so. We are just discovering a whole plethora of use cases. I'm guessing that it will develop slowly.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Navin, for your time and helping us, give a perspective and understanding into some of the applications of Gen AI into the retail. Probably this is the first conversation where, I've talked with a leader about a specific industry, and I think that makes it a little bit more real, a little bit more easy to comprehend, because I think everybody is hearing about Gen AI, but I think you put very succinctly notes into understanding what it actually means in the real world. Thank you again for your time.
Thanks, Rishabh. Thanks a lot for it.